Alright, now that we've got the beets inside, what I'm going to do is go ahead and rinse them really well. And then I'm going to, that's a bad example, going to go through them and I'm going to cut off about everything except for 2 inches of the tops. And I'm going to just trim back the root a little bit, and then we're going to parboil these before we get ready for canning. But because beetroot leaves are edible, I'm also going to look for leaves that are bad and put them into the compost, and leaves that are good, and we'll save them and eat them as a green sometime soon this week. So let's go through this big pile and get it sorted. Okay, you guys, so now I've got my beets here with the tops about 2 inches and the root mostly intact, and I've got my fresh greens. So now I'm going to parboil these guys, and we'll see how many pounds of beets we have after that. We are, sorry for the spin, following the recipe from one of the Ball cookbooks, the pickled beets recipe from the Ball home preserving book. Again, this is pickled beets, it's not plain beets. And of course here it calls for 10 cups of prepared beets, and you know, how in the hell are you supposed to know how many cups you have? It's not a weight measure. So I did weigh these. It's 3 pounds, 14 ounces, but it's got the tops on and the skin still on, so we'll have to reweigh them again after we parboil them. Now, if you're like me and you are going to be doing something like this over a 2-day period, then you can go ahead, you can cut the beets and stop here and then parboil them the next day and can them up, or you can parboil them until they're fork tender, so you put the big ones in first and then follow on the small ones on top for 5 minutes or something. I don't know, we'll figure it out as we go. And then let them cool to take the skins off, and then you can refrigerate them and start the next day again by making your brine. But you will need to warm the beets up before we put them in the canner, and because it's a pickled recipe, it just has to go into a water bath canner. But I have a way of doing that by just putting the beets and the brine in the jar and then placing the jar in the rack above the canner so the steam comes up and then warms the interior of the jars, and then when they're warm enough to the touch, we can lower them in. So again, if you want to break this up over 2 days, it's really easy to do. Either stop now or after you parboil, and then take the skin off. You got to let them cool a little bit anyway, so that's when I'm going to stop. It's getting late in the day, and we can pick it up tomorrow. So I just got my water on to boil, and look at these guys going. Okay, so we got the boiling water, and now we're going to put these into the pot. Oh, that's professional. I said I was going to put the big ones in first. Maybe I'll just use my hands. The big ones in first. Give them a little head start. That's a gigantic one. Alright, you guys, so I'm going to make up the brine now. And because this recipe is so poorly written, remember we talked before about it calls for 10 cups of prepared beets, and I'm not going to know how many prepared beets I have until they're boiled, processed, you know, skinned and everything. So I'm just going to make the amount that they suggest here, because it says it makes about 6 pint jars, and I think that's about how many we're going to get out of this. So we start with 3 tablespoons of pickling spice, and I have this pre-bought pickling spice. It does have cloves and cinnamon in it, not my favorite, but my husband likes it, so I don't put it in my pickles because I like them better, but I will put it in this because he likes it. Alright, 2½ cups of white vinegar. Don't you think it's funny they call it white vinegar when it's really clear? Why do we do that? See-through vinegar? White vinegar. 2½ cups. Vinegar. I like to wet measure by volume and something like this, and then I measure dry things with a scoop measure. So I need 1 cup granulated sugar, and I can't find my 1 cup scoop, so I'm going to use my third one 3 times. 2, 3, and I need 1 cup water. So I'll throw that in, and then we'll bring it to a boil. So let's take a minute here and talk about a couple things that are new-ish to canning, and if you're an old-time canner, you may not know, and if you're a newbie, you may not know. So back in the old days, we needed to sterilize the rings and the lids by putting them in boiling water and letting it simmer in boiling water. We don't need to do that anymore. We just need to make sure that they're clean. So I've got them sitting here in some hot water. I think the hot water makes the rubber gummier, so I like to do that. So we'll do that. And I do have my jars running in the dishwasher. But if you're going to be canning something, pressure canning or water bath canning for more than 10 minutes, your jars just have to be clean. They don't need to be sterile, because the canning process itself will sterilize the outside and the inside of the jar. So as long as it's 10 minutes or longer, you're good to go. And this recipe calls for a water bath canning of 30 minutes. So I just need to make sure they're clean, and I'm just running them through the dishwasher because I'm used to it, but I don't need to be quite as careful of not touching the inside and etc., as I normally would be, because we are processing for longer than 10 minutes, and frankly I can't think of anything that we don't process at least 10 minutes or longer. So 2 newish items for you to know about, and yeah, I'll let you know when the next step is reached. So I got my hot water back here, got my rack in it, my brines on to boil. These are still going. I know I said I was going to split these up into 2 days, but I decided I still had time, and why not, right? I'm halfway done, almost halfway done. So I'm going to do it all in 1 day, but I will tell you how, if you split it into 2 days, how to make that happen with the canner once we take the skins off. Alright, you guys, so I just popped out a small beet and a large beet, and you can see the fork is going in easily on the large beet and very easily on the small beet. And because these are going to process a little bit more in the jars while they're in the canner, I'm going to go ahead and pull them all now, and we'll let them cool down, and then we will remove the skins together. I'm going to do a quick cool with some ice water. Let them sit for, I don't know, maybe 60 seconds or so. Then we'll take them over to the sink and peel the skins off. Alright, so we've got a quick cool done. And now I'm just going to slip the skins right off. You see how easy that is? And I'm going to need a bowl or something to put the beets in, so I'll just put that right there. And I'll just take these right off. If you don't want your hands to be purple for a while, get some gloves or get somebody else to do it for you. It's not a big deal to me. My hands are constantly some color. If you don't like the little root tail, you can just take it off with your thumbnail or cut it off. Isn't this a beautiful color though? They're just gorgeous once they're cooked, and the skin just good. Slippery little suckers though. Get away from you if you let them. So we'll go ahead and just finish these up real quick. All right, you guys, so once you've peeled your beets, if that's the time where you want to stop, go ahead and put them in a Ziploc bag or a glass container with a very tight fitting lid, and you can leave them in the fridge overnight. And when you bring them out the next morning, let them come up to room temperature, and then make your brine and get your jars to at least to room temperature. Fill everything as we'll do right now, and put the lid and ring on, and then put it in your canning jar with the rack up. Let the water boil and the steam boil up around it, and when it's hot enough, then you can lower everything in. So that'll bring something that's room temperature or cool up to a hot level. So we've decided to do everything together today, and let's just get started. One extra thing I did is I did cut a little bit of garlic, chopped a little bit of, peeled a little bit of garlic to go into each. Okay, we've got a boil now, so I'm going to go ahead and lower this into the water. I'll bring you over here so you can see we've got a nice cover, water cover on there, and it will proceed to boil. So cover your pots, because pressure from the lid, well, pressure that builds up because of the lid being in place will allow things to boil quicker. So always put the pot on something, or a lid on something you want to be boiling faster. And so since it's boiling now, I'm going to go ahead and set that timer for 30 minutes. And you start the timer when it starts boiling, not when you put it in the water necessarily, because sometimes you put it in the water and it cools down, and then you have to wait for it to come back to a boil. So anyway, here we go, and we'll come back when they're done, and we'll put them on this towel, and I'll be able to have cleaned up these extra rings and tops that I have. All right, so we've reached our timer limit, and our jars should be done. So I'm just going to use my jar grabber and bring the jars out, hopefully with not that much more water on them. You really shouldn't tilt the jars to get the water off the top because you can break the seal. Do what you want. Sometimes I tilt them, sometimes I don't. Yep, you can hear them one go, seal up. And now, another one goes. Now we just leave them here up to 24 hours to seal. They almost always seal within a few hours, or in an hour, frankly. Often they're all sealed already. So I'll just let them cool down to room temperature here. Then I'll check the seals one more time. I'll take the rings off, label the lids, and put them away on my shelf to enjoy over the winter time. So that is how you can beets. They're beautiful, they're lovely, they're easy, they're nutritious. Cans of beets. Let me know if you have any questions, you guys.